All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Eve University's Introduction to Bookmarks. I'm Professor Academiac, and today I'll walk you through this very important piece of the game that I think isn't really well explained in the earlier tutorials for new players, and it's one of the most important mechanics of Eve. So I hope you enjoy this class. So I will be linking things in lecture.E-UNI. So that's the chat channeling game. And I will start by linking the slides for today's class. So as I'm walking through the class, I will be changing the slides. So if I just forget, if you feel like I'm talking to some content that you can't see on the slides, maybe I forgot to click, so please let me know. Also feel free to ask me questions along the way and interrupt. So you can ask questions either in lecture.E-UNI or in Mumble. I don't really mind. But just keep your Mumble set to push to talk, right? So let's start. I just want to get to know your experience. So if you let me know how many fleets you've been on and how long have you been playing Eve in general in that format. So in lecture.E-UNI. Oh, all right, sorry. Let me relink the slides. There you go. So this should be more up to date. Sorry about that. So in this format, really in lecture.E-UNI, if you can just type how long have you been playing Eve and how many fleets and stuff have you been on, so I can adjust the content if necessary based on your experience. This is going to be a very new bro friendly class, but just so I can get an idea. All right, so 3 months, 2 months. All right, excellent, and no fleet experience. So welcome everyone. Okay, so pretty new players. Welcome to Eve, I hope, and welcome to Eve University. I hope you enjoy this class, and I think it's a really important class for new players. So let's start. We're gonna walk through what are bookmarks in general, how to create them, types of bookmarks, where to place them, and so on, how to organize them. And for those of you who are interested, I'll be doing also a follow-up practical after the class in our HQ in Slays. So I'll be leaving from that station. So if you want to make your way there, if you're interested, I can fly with you, and then we can create bookmarks together and practice what we discussed here. And please, at the end of the class, I'd really appreciate your feedback to improve our classes. So that's a link. If you can fill that link after the class, I'd really appreciate it so I can improve the class if necessary. All right, so what are bookmarks? Bookmarks are really a location, store location in space. So that location can be of an abstract point, just some point, arbitrary point in space, or it can be at the location of a physical object or a celestial. So something like a jettisoned can, or anything really, an asteroid belt, a rock, whatever. Anything in space, or almost everything, can be bookmarked. And also you can bookmark locations that are abstract and have no physical objects attached. So to create bookmarks, all you need to do is go to the Neocom menu, click on the Peoples and Places tab, choose Places, click Add Location, and the shortcut for this, the default shortcut is Control B, and that's really, really useful because when you're in space, you don't want to go through all this menu and clicks. Let's say, for example, you want to create a save quickly while you're warping, so it's useful to use this shortcut. So Control B to open that window right away. Where it says label, type a meaningful name, and we'll talk about naming conventions later in the class. But let's say I'm creating a save, so I'm going to call it safe spot or something. If it's a quick save I'm doing while warping, I won't bother with notes, but then sometimes you tend to forget because you have a lot of bookmarks, so you tend to forget what that label you created quickly is, so it's better if you have some description to help you, especially if it's not an urgent bookmark like a safe spot or something. So if you have the time and luxury, you can add some description there, and then choose a folder for where you want to save that bookmark. And again, I'm going to talk about organizing bookmarks and naming conventions and how to use corporate and personal bookmarks later in the class, but for now you just choose a folder and then click Submit. When you click Submit, the exact time where you click Submit for abstract points is where the bookmark will be saved. So if it's a physical object, that doesn't really matter because you're going to save the location of that object. But if it's an arbitrary point, it's in this exact moment where you click Submit, that particular tick, your location, your ship's location, is what's going to be saved as the location for that bookmark. So if you're in a warp between two locations, say a gate and a station or something, then the exact moment where you hit Submit is where the location will be saved. And that's pretty useful because that way you can create bookmarks in locations where no one can really find except yourself or anyone who you share that particular bookmark with. So it's a really nifty thing to do. So if you're in mining, for example, and you want to create a bookmark to be closer to the rocks, then the exact moment where you click Submit is where the bookmark will be. So any questions before I move on? All right. All right, so using physical objects to create bookmarks, things like a Jetson can, for example, or a mobile tractor unit, something like that. So you right-click the object in space and choose Save Location. Again, meaningful name, details if necessary, and then choose a folder and click Submit. That's easy. That's no matter where you are in space, like even if you right-click and then warped off, sorry, not if you right-click, but if you choose save location and then started warping off and doing something else, and then you added the information at your own pace, it doesn't matter because you chose save location and you're not creating an arbitrary point. So it's important to distinguish between those two types of bookmarks. All right, so types of bookmarks. Bookmarks are pretty useful in a lot of different areas. So in P, let's start with structures. And I'm gonna practice those with you after the class if you're interested. But for now, station bookmarks are things like instant dock and instant undock bookmarks. Those are very, very useful and very important, especially if you're doing hauling in high sec, for example, or in your low sec or null sec, and the station might be camped by enemies and stuff. It's very, very useful to have instant docks and undocks. So because every station, even citadels, they have docking rings. So if your ship is within that ring, the station or citadel will show as on your overview as at 0 kilometers away from your ship. So that means you are within the docking ring. And as soon as you click dock, you're going to dock up. If it's a citadel, you'll be tethered, and so on. Sometimes when you warp to structures, you land a little bit off, maybe 2 or 3 kilometers away. And depending on what you're flying and whether there are enemies camping the station, that could be pretty dangerous. And that can be a lot of time or enough time for someone to catch you and scram web you and kill your ship. So instant dock bookmarks are really locations that you save within the docking ring of the station or citadel, and then instead of warping to the station on your overview, you warp to that particular bookmark, and you always land within the docking ring and you instantly dock. Station undocks are points that are really aligned with where the ship exits the station. And then if the station is camped or if there are enemies, war targets, or what have you, then because you're invulnerable for a little while, 30 seconds, then if you warp, and because you exit the station at full speed every time, if you warp to that instant undock bookmark, if you create one that is really aligned with that exit trajectory and you warp to it, so your ship's gonna instantly warp, so the enemy will not have enough time to lock you, scram you, and stuff like that. So again, this is really, really useful in high sec, like trade hubs, for example, and also, of course, in low and null sec, where enemies can freely engage you. Or more freely engage you, I should say. Any questions? So if you take a look at this image, for example, in the slides, every time you exit a station, you exit at a little bit of an angle, and this varies really, depending on the station, depending on, it's also random. So you want to create an instant undock bookmark that is pretty aligned and centered to all the possible trajectories. And through our practical tutorial after the class, I'm gonna show you how to do that. And you want to create the bookmark that is really at least 150 kilometers away, because that way you can warp to it. But also the more further away you go from the station, the more safe your undock becomes. And this is another example to show you how this range is really variable. So if you take a look at that's a E-UNI fleet undocking, and all those ships are undocking at the same time, and each one is undocking at a slightly different angle. So if your undock is aligned and centered, your align time, and that's the only time you're going to be vulnerable, is from the point where you hit warp to that bookmark to the time your ship actually hits warp. That's the only time you're going to be vulnerable. And the more centered your undock line is, then the faster you're going to warp, and the safer your undock becomes. So that's station docks and undocks. Let me go back to the other types of bookmarks. But do you have any questions before we move on from this? All right. Cool. So that's undocks and docks. for stations primarily. And yes, drivers have a question. Go ahead, please. Feel free to type or speak up and mumble if you want. Okay, until you type the questions, I'm gonna move on. Oh, there you go. So I've been told not to bookmark centered. So what have you been told? And why? So the problem with that, so Trevor is saying that he's been told to bookmark at a weird angle, and my issue with that becomes the more or the sharper the angle, then the more align time your ship will go through to align to that weird angle, and that's the only time you're vulnerable. So you want to minimize that time as much as you can. Okay, because War Target will be waiting for you on the instant undock centered spot, but that's a good point, but they don't necessarily have your range. So the bookmark might be at 300 kilometers. So do they happen to have a bookmark similar to yours at 300 kilometers centered? Maybe, maybe not. And this is why I'm saying the further away you warp, the more it becomes a safer spot. But again, if it's a weird angle, you're gonna spend more time aligning, and during that time you're vulnerable. And yes, you can sometimes dock up quickly, but there are some stations that are called kick-out stations that have a very small docking ring, so you might not have enough time to go back within the docking ring and dock if you get attacked. Or they might have ships like the command desis who can boost you or jump. They have things like a micro jump field that captures an area of effective 6 kilometer radius, and then any ship within that radius would be jumped away 100 kilometers in a direction of their choosing. So if they activate that while you're aligning, while you're vulnerable, then you won't be able to dock back. You're going to be jumped away from the station. You won't be able to get to dock back up. So I'm from the school that says have it centered, but have it further away. The further away it is, the safer it becomes, and the more unlikely people will have that range. All right, so moving on, and again, feel free to ask questions, guys. We can stop and ask questions at any time. So those are the station docks and undocks. They also work for citadels. Citadels, you really don't need an undock on a citadel because you're going to be tethered when you undock, so no one can attack you anyway. But you need the dock. Sometimes you land further away from the docking ring of the citadel, unless they changed that recently. But yeah. But for stations, for sure, you need those, especially the stations that you frequent, and big stations like trade hubs, JITA, and so on. So other types of bookmarks, let's jump to the PvE bookmarks. So PvE on the bottom right. So you got your mining bookmarks, for example. If you're mining an adventure or a slow barge and warp to the asteroid belt, you probably land a little further away from the rocks. So you might want to create bookmarks that are closer to the rocks to make you more efficient and quicker in your cycles, because you have to go back to the station and drop your ore and stuff. So it's good that you have a closer bookmark to save a little bit of time. Mission sites can also be bookmarked because after you run the mission, you might want to go back and salvage. And if you turn in the mission, the the auto bookmark, the encounter, whatever the agent stuff in the right click menu or in the top left corner of your screen here, becomes like disappears if you turn in the mission. So the only way to go back is if you bookmark the location, and the Rex would stay for about 2 hours after the mission is turned in. So that gives you enough time to switch ships and go back. Maybe drop an MTU if it's safe enough, or just use a destroyer to salvage, whichever you prefer. But you have to have a bookmark if you're going to turn in the mission. Exploration, again, so you want to run exploration sites. You want to have a safe spot. For example, I'm going to talk more about safe spots in a bit, but you want to bookmark the locations of the cans, for example, so you can warp back into the cans directly. And especially if you're doing wormhole exploration, it is extremely important to bookmark the wormhole entries and exits, because some people like scan sites and then switch ships and then run sites with different ships. So if you go through a wormhole and forget to bookmark the entry and exit, and then you switch ships and you don't have probes, then you're really screwed. You have to self-destruct to be able to get back to high sec. So it's extremely important not to forget to bookmark entries and exits. And I'm gonna talk more about the naming conventions and stuff. If you're a Eve University member, we have some naming conventions for different campuses on how to name the entries and exits and all that stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So that's for PvE bookmarks. Now I'm going to talk about PvP bookmarks. So you have your tactical bookmarks, things like observation points. So a bookmark that is 300 kilometers, 500 kilometers, whatever. Anything that is on grid with, say, a station, so you can warp to that point, be in a relatively safe distance from an enemy fleet, for example, but still you'd be able to see them on grid, see their composition, all that. So you can have a tactical bookmark that is 150 kilometers away at least, so you'd be able to warp from the object, and that could be a gate, that could be a station, or what have you. The grid size is really a radius of 8 kilometers, so anything that is within 8 kilometers of the object of interest, say a gate, you'd be able to be on grid with whatever is landing on that particular gate. So that's an on-grid tactical or an observation point. There are also off-grid tacticals. These are tacticals that are off-grid, so further than 8 kilometers away. So you won't be able to see enemies or people who are on grid of the object, say a gate or a station. You'd only be able to find them, and they find you on descan. But maybe you want to be descanning for your fleet or scouting for your fleet or whatever, so you want to get in a close range and close proximity to be able to descan them quickly and better. Scouting safes in low sec, for example, if we're running fleets in low sec, I tend to have a bookmark in every system close to the sun, but not really on grid with the sun. And the reason being, most of the time, most of the objects are within descan range from the sun. So instead of warping to the sun and starting descanning, I just have a bookmark close by, so I can be relatively safe as I descan the system and report intel for my fleet. So any questions about those? All right, cool. So Bounce points. Bounce points are important, especially if you're flying Logi or EWAR. So a bounce point is a bookmark that is within warping range that allows you to warp out and warp back into so let's say a fleet is fighting another fleet, and you get targeted in a frigate like a Griffin. So you want to warp out if you get targeted, because the Griffin is paper thin, really. So if you get attacked, you're going to lose that ship really quickly. So you want to warp out to that bounce point and then warp back in to get back to the fleet and continue the fight rapidly. So you don't want to warp away all the way to a distant celestial object. So it's really helpful also if you have these bounce points around gates or stuff. So in low-sec, for example, if we engage like illegal targets, you become suspect. And if you're on a gate or if you're in a station, then the station guns, the sentry guns, would start attacking you until you warp off. So if you have a bounce point, you can just warp away from the gate at least 150 kilometers away from the guns, so they would stop shooting you, and then you can warp back and continue the fight. So they're really nifty that way. All right, safe spots. Safe spots are extremely useful. So you have your mid safes that are aligned, and these are safe spots really between two objects, and let me show you a graphic for that. So that explains it a little bit easier in the slides. So a mid safe spot is between two celestials, so say two gates or a gate and a station, whatever. And then an unaligned safe is a bookmark that is in an arbitrary direction. And of course, the unaligned safe is safer-ish, so it's a little bit more safe, because if someone's trying to locate you using DScan, they're gonna start choosing celestials and scanning at 5-degree angle, so they can pinpoint your general direction. Where you are, they might know exactly where you are in terms of range, but they would know the general direction of where your ship is. If you're unaligned, that means they're unlikely to find you using DScan easily. The reason that's important is because there are things called combat probes, and combat probes are things that could scan down ships in space, even in safes. So if you are, say, in a mid-safe or an unaligned safe or whatever, hiding away from a war target in a system without a station or whatever, they can combat scan, or you're running a mission, whatever, they can combat scan you down. So they have an exact location of where your ship is in space, and then they can warp to you and attack you. You can see those probes generally on your DScan if you have it set up properly. But anyways, because they want to minimize the time the probes are in space, so they want to attack you as quickly as possible, because if you see the probes on DScan, you're going to just warp off. So they want to minimize the time the probes are in space. So what they do first is scan using DScan, get your general direction, get where you are, so they have a better position to place the probes, which means they might reduce a cycle and probing you down, which significantly reduces the time required for them to scan you down. So if you're in a mid-aligned safe, you could be visible on DScan, otherwise you're not. Like on 5 degrees, if they're scanning on that celestial. All right, so going back to other types of bookmarks, I think I covered them all. Yep, so that's pretty much it. Oh no, so deep safes. Deep safes is Deep safes are bookmarks that are beyond 14.3 AU from any celestial. So it's a safe spot. It's a bookmark that is very, very far away, and you can create those when running some missions. Some missions put you in that far away from other celestials, and especially incursions and stuff. They tend to spawn in very far away locations. These are extremely useful safe spots because you're not going to be visible on D-scan, and the enemy would not, if there's an enemy in low sec or trying to scan you down, they would not be even able to locate whether you're docked, whether you're in space. They have no idea really because they can't see on D-scan from any celestial. Finally, rolling safe. So rolling safe is not a bookmark per se, it's a tactic using a safe spot. So a rolling safe really, if you're running, say, a fleet and you got into combat and we lost the fight and we want to regroup, so we tend to go like scatter, warp out, and then regroup at a safe location, any safe location, right? So if we stay stationary at that safe location, enemies, if they do have combat scanner probes, they can again scan us down quickly and find us. So a rolling safe is a tactic that when we get to that safe spot, a fast frigate just starts burning in one random direction. Everyone starts aligning to that frigate, and then as soon as that frigate hits 150 kilometers, you warp to it and repeat. You keep warping, keep warping, keep warping, so that even if the enemy fleet was able to scan you down, scan the fleet down using combat probes, we'd all be moving, and by the time they land, we'd already be 150 kilometers away, so they can't attack us. That's really useful for when your fleet becomes like not combat capable. You're being hunted down. So any questions? Going once. All right. So now I'm going to talk about organizing bookmarks. So first of all, there are two types of bookmarks. There are corporate and personal bookmarks. Corporate bookmarks are shared with the whole corporation. So everyone, if you're in Eve University, for example, everyone in Eve University will have access to those bookmarks. And this is pretty useful if you're running fleets with missioning fleets with others or doing exploration, and especially useful in campuses, particularly the wormhole campus where you need to scan down chains of wormholes and stuff like that and share them together with everyone in the corporation, right? The drawback about corporate bookmarks is that there are only 500 bookmarks that you can create and share with others. And if the 500 are created, then you can't create more. You have to delete some before you can create more. So this is why it's very important to follow the etiquette in the campuses. And let me actually link you a forum post. So if you're in Eve University, these are the campus schemes for creating bookmarks, and you need to, so you can read that later if you're interested, but depending on which campus you're in, then they have specific ways of organizing their bookmarks, so it's good courtesy to follow this etiquette to make sure that we don't go overboard with our quotas and everything. There aren't quotas per se, but it's just good courtesy to follow this to minimize the number of bookmarks required, I should say. If you're not in the uni, then same concepts apply. Whichever corporation you're in, they're going to be having a maximum of 500 bookmarks, and you have, I'm sure most corporations have a scheme to organize their bookmarks. So personal bookmarks, on the other hand, are relatively unlimited. I know there's a soft limit. I'm not sure how big is that number. I know one of our professors in Eve University, Seamus Donohoe, he has hit that cap before, if I remember correctly. But it's a ridiculously huge number, so it's relatively unlimited, you would say. So you can create as many, almost as many personal bookmarks as you want. So this is useful for instant docs, undocks, your scouting tacticals, your station tacticals, all that stuff. Oh, and speaking of, circling back to the campus schemes, I'm also going to link the mapper. So that's the E-UNI mapper tool. So depending on your campus, again, you might need access to that tool to organize and chains of wormholes and stuff like that. But anyways, going back to organizing bookmarks, so those are the two types of bookmarks, really, personal and corporate. And within those two types, you can create folders. Going to folders, sorry, I'm gonna skip this and circle back to it later. Oh, actually not. So I guess the way you'd name, you'd organize your bookmarks in folders, there are, again, different schemes. So you can check the campus schemes and naming conventions, or you can also check other schemes that are posted in this wiki article, Eve University's Bookmarks wiki article. So there are different things, different ways you can name your bookmarks for ease of access. So once you're in space, you want to know exactly which bookmark you want, and you know where it is. So having a naming convention helps you find that location extremely fast and avoid like looking into folders and stuff while you're vulnerable in space. So I tend, for example, personally, to have a bookmark called Station Docs. Another book folder called Station Undocks, Gate Tacticals, stuff like that. So with the purpose of the bookmark, I create folders for each purpose. So docs, undocks, and then while you're in space, only the bookmarks that are available in that particular system will show under the right-click menu. So if you have 1,000 bookmarks in one folder, that really doesn't matter, because when you're in a particular system, only the bookmarks that are available in that system will be visible in that folder in space. So everything else is going to be filtered out. So I find that useful so I know right-click, docs, I want station 5, for example, or in, let's say the HQ is station 713, so I have it written that way. Something like that. So I right-click, go to the docs, and I see that it's station 5 Moon 3, Center of Advanced Studies. That's the abbreviation, so I can warp to that point relatively quickly. Again, you can have whatever naming convention you want, but if you're using corporate bookmarks, it's good courtesy to check the naming conventions that are shared by others and use them. But for your personal bookmarks, you can do whatever you want, whichever naming convention that suits you, and you can easily find information quickly. All right. So questions before moving on from this? Okay, so bookmarks can also be moved and changed. Like you can change the location from one folder to another. If you're in space, you can edit, right-click, edit location of the folder. Sorry, not of the folder, but of the particular bookmark. So right-click, go to the save spot, for example, in this example in the slides, deep save, edit location, and then you can change the folder for that particular bookmark. It doesn't, when you click submit, it doesn't change the location of the actual physical location of the bookmark. It just changes the folder for which it's saved. You can also move bookmarks between folders in your places tab. So if you go to your Neocom, where are they? I forgot the, it's people and places. So let me check quickly. I know the shortcut. Let me actually go back. I apologize about that. Yeah, Neocom, peoples and places, and then the places tab. So it's not, oh, there we go. It's not in one of the folders. So Neocom, people and places, which is Alt E, the shortcut. And then if you go to places tab, let me change back the slides. Okay, it's safe. All right, so if you open that window, the people and places, in the places tab, you can open different folders, and then you can move like by clicking and dragging bookmarks between those folders by just clicking and dragging. And you can do up to 10 bookmarks. You can move up to 10 bookmarks at a time. So if you want to move a bunch of bookmarks, then you have to do them just 10 by 10. That's a little bit annoying, but that's the way it is. All right, so another interesting thing about bookmarks is that they can be shared with others. There you go. So again, you can share them. So think of a bookmark not as a GPS coordinate that you can tell someone, but as a physical object that you have to share. So you can't really share it unless you're in a station and then you trade it to someone through the item exchange or a contract or whatever. So if you select bookmarks, you can shift drag to copy the bookmark, and then you move that bookmark to your item hanger. So you create a copy of that bookmark, and then you can share with someone else. And of course, be very careful who you share your bookmark, like especially your personal bookmarks with, especially your undocks and docks and stuff like that. But again, you have a maximum of 10 bookmarks at a time to shift and drag. So if there are a bunch of bookmarks, you have to do them on multiple trips. So 10 at a time, you click and you shift and drag to copy, to create copies. Because if you drag only without pressing shift, then it's gonna be moved, and then you're gonna lose your own copy of that bookmark. Any questions about sharing naming conventions? All right, cool. So bookmarks are also visible in space, and you can hide or show them, like you can toggle hiding or showing either your personal bookmarks or the corporate ones by hovering on your compass and then clicking personal or corporate to toggle them on and off. I find it really useful when, especially when I'm in PvP fleets, when I have them shown, because I can see if, let's say, an enemy scout is on a gate and on a tactical, maybe I do have a tactical that is close to them that I can warp to and stuff like that. So I find them useful to be able to see them in space, and they're not gonna be that many anyways. They're not gonna clutter your screen. All right, so any questions before we conclude this class? Going once, going twice. All right, thank you for attending. I hope you enjoyed and learned about bookmarks from this. No, my pleasure. And as I said, please, guys, if you can fill out this class feedback form, it really helps me personally and the uni in general to improve and work on the classes to make them better. So we'd really appreciate your feedback. For those of you who are interested in the practical or the practice session, I'm gonna. Oh, you're absolutely welcome. I'm gonna be creating a fleet. I just need to take a little bio, so maybe 10 minutes, and we'll reconvene at 1 to do some practice stuff, how to create tacticals, undocks, and so on. If you're interested, just let me know now if you're going to be attending. So just X up in lecture.E-UNI if you're interested in attending that. And X up means like just type in an X in lecture.E-UNI like that. Peter, okay. So Peter, all right. So I'll take a quick bio break, and we'll reconvene in at 1 a.m. to do that, to practice what you want, really, since it's just you. All right. Thank you, everyone. All right, so now if you try to lock me, you probably find me invulnerable, right? Just keep trying. So yeah, I'm now gone. So it's very difficult for you to lock me in fine. So if you're an enemy trying to hunt me down, uh, because I'm invulnerable during that time, you're not going to be able to lock me down. And I warped really quickly, so it's very unlikely that you get a lock cycle synced with my align time. So for the docking point, I'm going to warp back to the station. Let's say again you're an enemy camping this station, and you're within the docking ring waiting for me. I created a docking point really within the structure of the station. So now I can instantly dock up. So see, a docking point is a bookmark that I created within the docking ring of the station, within a really safe distance from the undock area or any other structure. So you also don't want to create it close to the structure because you don't want to bounce off. So the graphic of the structure design, the station design, if you create it close to the wall of the station or all those weird looking things, you might actually bounce off the station depending on how big your ship is. So you want to do it in a relatively safe and vacant area like where I am right now. So actually go where my location or the location of my ship is and create now a bookmark called, name it whatever is easier for you to find, to abbreviate this particular station. Create a bookmark in this location and place it in your docs folder. And do that until I switch ships to a smaller ship. So basically that's an instant doc bookmark, the one that you're creating right now. It's super easy to create instant docs bookmarks. Undocks are a little bit trickier. So you want to practice those? All right. Okay, so let me know once you created this one. So were you able to create your instant doc bookmark? Yeah, good point. Control B. Yeah, I usually like the number because it's more important and then the name. So I would say station 7 or S7-M3, which is Moon 3, and then the abbreviation of the station name. Again, you're gonna create your own naming convention.